Good evening, everybody. My name is Morden, and I will be your host for tonight's entertainment. Where we last left off, we had just started creating ethereal blooms, and we had just finished making our thaumaturgical harness. In addition to such progress, we had also begun laying the groundwork for removing the taint from our land, and as you can see, it's going quite well so far. I have also started making additional ethereal blooms in hopes of surrounding our territory in a wide swath of safe ground to walk on. So far though, this progress has been very, very promising, and I am quite pleased with how it turned out. In terms of base work, I have been cleaning up this island and making it look pretty, removing some of the weird shelves, and rounding off a lot of the odd square-looking corners. I do believe it is looking much better now that it has been properly shaped and sculpted, though I'll probably still be doing quite a lot of work on and off here and there as needs demand. I still need to naturalize the dirt on top and bring it down to give it a bit more weight, and probably eventually start touching up that island. As for what's on the roster today, I've decided that it would be best to proceed with a little bit of base work instead of, constantly marching forward in our efforts to remove the taint. You have to take a break every now and then or else you'll get burnt out. So I'm just going to simply set down some of these newer ethereal blooms and hopefully make a little bit more progress towards, cleaning things up a bit. Let's make a little hole for the ethereal bloom to do its magic in here. Eventually I'll probably make this a little bit more attractive looking, but until then I want to keep the tainted nodes under control. Now the optimal distance to place ethereal blooms is about 16 blocks, but I find that 12 blocks apart is far more effective and safer. The most important thing is to place ethereal blooms underneath any tainted nodes that happen to be nearby to keep the spread of the taint fibers that they spawn under control. And the last one here. There we go. With the ethereal blooms moved further into the taint lands, our borders will be able to expand, and soon we will be able to explore all this without having to worry about being poisoned by the infested thorns. Now, with that business out of the way, I think it's a good idea for us to start working on expanding our base a little bit. And I'm thinking I'm going to expand the thaumaturgical basement that I have in this island. It'd be very nice to be able to expand our infusion setup and make it a little bit more stable. Now obviously this means doing things like growing trees and all that boring stuff. However, it is a necessary evil, and I'm willing to put in the work to make our base look nice. Now the best direction to expand in is either in this direction, though I do believe it'd be a little bit cramped for our purposes, or directly downward, which I think will be our ticket. I'm thinking something with a vaulted ceiling if we can manage it in this very small space. However, there should also be space beneath the altar for our stabilizing components, as infusion altars are able to detect stabilization components, I believe, up to 12 blocks downward. I'd have to test that myself, unfortunately. Yes, I think that's enough space. I think it'd be interesting if we did a diamond-shaped room as well. That might, help it stand out a little bit. Of course, I'd have to get a lot more, greatwood wood, as this is no doubt insufficient. Ah, the fucking blood moon again. Let's see how much I can get done before it, turns irredeemably orange. Though, judging from the slow tinting of the screen, not very long. There we go, that's not looking so bad. The orangeness is becoming slowly unbearable, so I will meet you back after the blood moon, so I'm the only one that has to endure it. Once we throw down a little bit more greatwood framework and start setting up the design, I think this will look pretty cool. Okie dokie. Now that the blood moon is over, we can resume our regular activities, though obviously it had to start raining as soon as the blood moon was over. If it's not one thing, it's another, eh? Oh well, I can cope far better with rain than I can with the neon orange that the blood moon brings. Ah, and our greatwood trees have started to grow, so I can harvest those up. Learning touch dig has been a blessing. I have saved so much iron from not having to make and use tools. Nowadays I only really use tools on the stuff that the spell can't get a hold of, either because it's something like a crafting table or a chest or something along those lines. Alright. I've harvested about as much greatwood as I care to do so at the moment, and, you know, these greatwood logs, they might look alright in the floor. Let me test that out. I'm not terribly impressed with how untextured or I don't know how to describe it. This floor could use a little bit more interest, but obviously the greatwood log doesn't look too great right there, so we'll return to that idea in a bit. On to our initial plan of expanding downwards. Whoops. Let us begin. Actually, let me grab my, some of my repair stone just in case I punch a hole in the floor. Alright. So, resuming this sort of vague diamondy shape. I'm trying to think of what would look good. Dark oak immediately comes to mind, honestly. But I don't know how dark oak, I can't quite remember how dark oak looks in this texture pack. But I mean, I have been meaning to build that alchemy catalyst for quite some time, so I wouldn't be remiss to do so during this, episode. Alright, this shape is looking, alright. Yeah, I think it just needs texture. I'm gonna go make that alchemy catalyst because, like, greatwood planks by themselves are very sexy looking, but they're also just one texture out of many textures that we could be utilizing in our builds. So, let me see what I can do about getting a hold of some dark oak, and that just involves a simple alchemy catalyst. Looks like alchemy catalysts are pretty cheap too, just 2 brewing stands, a mana pearl, and 2 gold ingots. There we go, alchemy catalyst. Alright, let us plunk this down right here. Okie dokie. I'm gonna have to turn off my coin of fortune in order to properly use this. Onk sampling. Okie dokie. Looks like, oh, the fucking endoflames are eating my saplings as they're coming out. There we go. Don't fucking do that, I'm making saplings. How far along is dark oak in this cycle? Dark oak is made by throwing acacia into it. Okay. Acacia. Now I'm thinking about acacia. I should try and incorporate that into some of my builds. Okie dokie, dark oak obtained. Now I don't want to plant these dark oaks anywhere where they'll just disturb the silver woods, so I'm gonna hop on over here to cultivate the sapling. See how they'll look in the floor to add a little bit of texture variation, because I know how spruce wood looks in this texture pack. It would absolutely, definitely, 100% not complement greatwood. You want to hear a weird texture pack pet peeve that I have? I'm not a big fan of when the inside of logs don't match the planks. Like, I get there is such a thing as like wood staining and all, but I'm just not a big fan of like the fact that this doesn't really match this at all. Like, the outside matches, but that's about it. Let us see how it looks in the floor. Okay, a little dark. How does the log look in there? Ugh, still too dark. Alright, so dark oak did not work. What about spruce logs? Since I know the planks won't be complementary, what about logs? Having a sideways log facing the grain of the wood can be very nice to complement a build. It makes things look a little bit more rough-hewn. Alright, so let's try this. What if there's a chiseled variation of dark oak that matches a little bit better? Because I know the chisel variants tend to change the color of the log a little bit. Where is a chisel? Okay, let us see. Booga booga. Let's do smooth. Let's see how smooth looks. Yeah, that matches just the tiniest bit better, as opposed to... Alright, maybe I can make this work. Let's do some prototype texturing and see how that turns out. I mean, maybe? Maybe. I'll leave this floor like this to see if maybe I change my mind on how it looks, but I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. I'm gonna throw the dark oak in here just in case, and maybe also the spruce. Yeah, I'll leave this here and see if I get used to it. Alright, so while trying to find something to texture this with was a bit of a bust, hopefully designing this and making this look pretty will not be a bust. Now that I have a chisel, at least I can try out a couple of different textures and see which one works out. Are you fucking kidding me? A blood moon again? Ugh. Alright. Again, same routine as before. I'll hold out as long as possible, and then I gotta dip out before everybody's retinas are burned out. I wonder if the symmetry aspect applies to the items in the floor, because if not, like not items, I meant blocks. If not, I would love to do some type of neat spiral pattern in the floor. Okay, floor filled in. Let's cycle through some of the available textures. It looks like most of these have not been textured by Sortex, though. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It looks like we're just gonna have to stick with the default look. Alright. With the blood moon over in the bottom area finally set up, let us move our infusion altar downstairs. And for those of you curious, yes, these infusion pillars are in fact pick-upable. They'll just break back down into chiseled blocks and regular blocks again. And the runic matrix is also pick-upable. Whoops. There we go. Boop boop. Aha. And there we go. Let us recraft our crystal clusters and set the pedestals back down. 1, 2, 3. How far out are these pedestals detected? Because maybe I can get them looking a little bit nicer than they were before. Alright, so the book doesn't say, but I imagine it probably detects them from at least 4 or 5 blocks out. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 5. Alright. And from here, we will just do it every other block. Well, I still have some leftover pedestals. Let's refine this a little bit. I still do have some leftover pedestals. Let's try this formation. It won't be as nicely rounded, but it will use up the leftover pedestals that I have. There we go. That looks pretty nice. Now we just have the crystal clusters to work with. Now I can't remember if this operates on bilateral, quadrilateral, octolateral, or any other type of symmetry, so I'm just going to hope that it operates on octolateral symmetry for the purposes of arranging the crystals. because I am quite certain that it does not operate on bilateral. I'm gonna have to go looking for a lot more shards, I think, in order to properly decorate and stabilize this. I'm also going to have to make a spider farm, I think, for all the string to make candles and enchanted fabric. So far, though, this is looking pretty alright. Definitely unstable as fuck, though. If I try and do anything with this, like, these little diddly crystals are going to do jack shit for the total stability. For those purposes, I am going to strap on the thaumaturgical harness and start working on the underside of the altar. Just making a little room. So this will be the first platform. Under here, this is where crystals are going to go in layers. And then this is going to be where the skull repository is going to go. I'm not an expert on thaumaturgical stabilization. My usual strategy is candles fucking everywhere. Doing it in any way besides candles fucking everywhere is a little bit outside my realm of expertise. Actually, since this is arcane stone is actually expensive due to the lack of shards, I'm going to actually core this with great wood, and also make things a little bit cheaper in the long run because great wood is not spawnable, which is an unusual trait of all the Thaumcraft woods, that they are not spawnable. Alright, I'll expand out the crystal platform a little bit more, just so that it is, again, a little cheaper on, the arcane stone. Okay, there we go. Looking good. Hopefully, all the pedestals are detectable by this altar. I'll be pretty heartbroken if they aren't. Okay, with that little bit of base work done, let us proceed working on up here. This thing needs walls, and the interior of the island needs cleaning up. There's a lot of extraneous stone that does not need to exist here. Alright. I've snipped off a bit of the excess stuff just a little bit, and I think we have enough room to expand the edges of this outwards by 1, and maybe we'll fill this entire section of it, the bottom of it, with great wood planks and proceed from there, because I find it easier to overbuild, I guess is the phrase. Build more than you need and then contract from there. It's easier than having to expand. And obviously we'll set down an arcane levitator down there so that we can get up and down without need of the thaumaturgical harness or our jumping helmet. The floor has been fully expanded now, as far as I can go in any direction without it interfering with the later design. And now I'm just slowly starting to plan out what is going to go in each of these rooms, so to speak, because I do plan on dividing this area up into rooms. One thing I'm thinking is that I might have the resources finally to create the automatic Essentia sorting system. The only issue with the Essentia sorting system is that I'm going to need, with the aspects that we have on this world, about 27 blocks in a straight line, because this thing does not take well to being curved, and probably a buffer of about 2 blocks on both ends in order to accommodate. So let me count out these areas and see which side might be the longest and best suited. Okay, so it looks like this piece, lengthwise, is 32 blocks long, which is just slightly enough space, I think. Might be a little bit cramped. I could try to curve the inputs so that it is not so cramped, but again, curving it is not generally a good idea because of the way Essentia tubes work. I'd have to move the thaumatorium, which I'm perfectly fine with doing, but yeah, it looks like this is the only space down here that's available for the sorting system. So in order to make an Essentia sorting system, one of the things that you need right away is Essentia buffers, which are expensive on the iron and expensive on the essentia required. It'll be a bit of work and probably something for I'll do in between episodes. Relight the fire over which the crucible goes. Place the crucible. Replace the alchemical constructs. And poke with a wand. Replace the essentia tubes as well. And separate them so that they work properly. Alright, there we go. Set up a new zone for the water source to go in. And then we will clean up the arcane alembic and the smeltery because we are moving it over to where the system is going to be. Now, with the Essentia sorting system, you're actually going to want your alchemical furnace up by a couple of blocks because of the way that it will work. Let me just mentally map out. No, that's not enough room. Let me push it forward a little bit. Basically, it will have the smelter will be in this area. Then, in the middle, there will be this long train of Essentia buffers going this way. And with jars on either side going down, there'll be a jar here and a void jar here. The void jar is overflow protection, basically. I would rather waste Essentia than have it get stuck in the buffers and clog up the whole system. And the Essentia buffers are only one part of the puzzle. The next stage is, Essentia filters, and then the Essentia buffers configured in a very specific way. It's there, and it's curved, and I am going to go for curved just because, like, I think I can get it to work properly. And I don't know if I'm going to do the 3 tall version or not. And then if the tube is like that, then the tubes come down into a jar, into a jar, to a void jar. Yeah, that ought to work. I might push it forward another block though, just so I'll have room to walk behind the void jars. But that's the basic principle. Yes, I think that'll be enough room. Let us trace out the walls for this place so that I remember to keep in mind that this is where the wall will go. Okie dokie. I may have gone a little bit OTT with the torches, but you can never be too safe when there are mobs that shoot fire from their eyeballs around. Doing a little bit more wall work, and yes, I think this will do. We will have a little platform in front of it where I can load stuff up in. Yeah, okay. We've got carpenter's blocks, so I can also set down some carpenter stairs here to keep the aesthetic going. So down the middle, there will be a pathway for me to walk. I just need to quickly trace out the shape again. Okay, I actually did some counting out, and this is how long it's going to have to be. But I think I can just change it so the access point is just by going around the furnace instead of walking up on the platform from a separate section. So I think this will work out better in the long run. I hope. So the first set of jars will be up here with me. Yeah, the first set of jars will be coming down here, and then a restricted tube will come out, set another jar, and then another restricted tube, and then a void jar. Now I'm going to go quickly, mine for limestone in order to complete this. So I'll catch you on the flip side of that. I promise I won't be long. Oh my god. Ugh, that's the third one this episode. I found another amazing aspect about the fucking blood moon. Look, you can hardly tell limestone apart from concrete in this goddamn light. I've decided I'm going to expand the platform out just a tiny itty bitty bit just to give myself a little bit more wiggle room to build this. I also would like to have at least one additional space for an overflow jar. It's not required, but sometimes Essentia does make it all the way to the end, even though it's not supposed to. And it can get stuck at the final buffer at the very end, so I'd like to have a little insurance just in case. There we go. Now, something that I want to add to this place, but I'm not certain how currently, is windows. Now, obviously, traditional windows are not going to work down here. Not even false ones, as open blocks is not on this mod pack. However, What I could do is just have glass with a block behind it to give the illusion of windows. Maybe something that looks interesting. I was actually taking a look at void stone earlier because I really like how it looks, and it fits in very well with the general aesthetic that we have going on here. But it's expensive. Obsidian stone, Eye of Ender. It's not something that I'm terribly interested in paying the price for just yet. So we'll stick with a windowless area for now. But make no mistake, I would love to have windows in here. Now, while we are up here, let us make a space really quick for a elevator. After all, we don't want to forget this whole business down here, do we? This might be a little bit more than 10 blocks, so we'll probably need 2 elevators, but hopefully not. You know, these arcane levitator holes are looking awfully drab. How about we put stairs around them just to emphasize them a little bit more? There we go. Now they're a little bit easier to see as well. Maybe I'll even have the levitators on a raised platform. That would be neat. So this is basically the full length of the Essentia sorting system in this mod pack. How long it'll need to be is variable. Basically, it's the amount of aspects you have access to divided by 2. And in the case of uneven aspects, you might have to deal with having a straggler at the very end. But it is how it is. You know, I talk an awful lot about texture and variation and making things look interesting and all that fun stuff, and then something I tend to leave out, not necessarily intentionally, but something I do definitely leave out on, is the usage of visual noise and keeping it in mind when you're designing something. Basically, if you want your walls to be noisy, you want your floor to be plain. If you want your floor to be noisy, you want your walls to be plain. And I generally do not recommend ever having your roof be noisy. Your roof should always be a place for the eye to rest visually. Like you can see on the exterior, it's quite visually noisy. There are plants everywhere, there's color variation, there is more texture on the outside, and then on the inside, the walls sort of fade into the background against the rich dark floor and all the objects that happen to be in the room. Managing visual noise can be a really tough challenge for somebody who's new to building to manage, because it's not something that necessarily comes intuitively, especially because everybody has a different tolerance for how much noise they're willing to look at. Some people don't mind when things are really eye-burny and noisy to look at, and then some people are really sensitive and cannot stand when things have really bright colors or even stand out as much as an average person could take. And neither viewpoint is bad or good. It's just simply one of the many viewpoints that you have to take into account when designing your arts. So for example, I want the walls to sort of fade into the background down here, same as upstairs, because Thaumcraft stuff, as you can see, is very visually noisy and frequently animated. So not only do I want it to stand out so that it's easy to see, I also want it to not be more eye burn in a big pile of eye burn down here. I want my laboratory, you know, to be nice looking. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a noisy looking build either. What is important is that you balance that noise with places for the eye to relax. For example, like a lot of retro designs, a lot of retro diners or buildings or offices tend to have very noisy designs with a lot of high contrast blacks and whites alongside a flash color. And those are still very good looking, but they're also quite noisy. However, if you study these builds in real life, you will notice that they still have places to rest, such as in the details of white and in larger patches of a solid color. a good-looking retro diner will lead your eye around the room using their splash color and patches of white to create contrast. And again, I want to put a disclaimer that, like, I'm not an expert, I'm just somebody who's very interested in this sort of stuff. If you want to study the experts, there are plenty of architectural books and interior design and different design philosophies for what the ideal amount of contrast and visual noise and how to balance your desire for color with making sure that the design of the room is still readable, etc. It's something that I've had to keep in mind quite a lot as somebody who has designed a texture pack for Minecraft before. Is it becomes very obvious how much visual noise is too much, because you can make a texture and it looks really nice on the PNG, and then you implement it and it looks like not only dog shit, but it makes your eyes hurt. So it's all about practice and honing your craft. Okie dokie. I am out of concrete now, but the walls are slowly coming together. Soon you will not even be able to tell that this is the interior of an island, or that this thing was hollow to begin with. We just light up these patches so that I don't get another intruder again. And there we go, good to go. Now, if you remember, Essentia buffers are quite expensive. They require a Essentia valve, a restricted Essentia tube, and regular Essentia tubes, as well as the iron to go with it. Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure that, yeah, it's quite pricey to make. And now my limiting factor is not iron, but cinnabar. So, heading on down here, let's see what we cannot mine up. Let us pick a direction. I have severely mauled this place. Mainly because I thought it wouldn't be worth it to come back, but evidently this place is still usable if you are careful. So, let me go mining and I'll see what I come back with from the trip, eh? Hey guys, you want to know how much cinnabar I managed to get over 45 minutes of mining? 3! Thankfully, I do have a means to double this, but the spawn rates of ores on this land, I tell you. Fucking abysmal. Alright, with this cinnabar smelting up, I am going to hit back up to the top side to grab the rest of the materials that I'm going to need to hopefully get the Essentia buffers going. Back again after that short absence. Let us make a lot of these tubes. We are going to be needing a lot of these. At least 4 times the amount of the length, that is. More tubes. Out of Essentia. Alright. I'm gonna break out my other wand for this one, even though this one's a pain in the ass to fill back up. And that should be enough. Though now I have to refill both my wands. That's okay. Now, I'm going to need levers for Essentia valves. And I believe, yes, these require stones. So I'm going to need stone, valves, and lots of files. Thankfully, files do not require Essentia to create, though valves and restricted tubes do require Essentia to create, unfortunately. This is what a lot of Thaumcraft looks like, unfortunately, when you're not doing all the fun stuff. It's a lot of going back and forth between your various nodes, refilling your wand, and setting things up and wishing you had made a wand recharge room, and then forgetting to do a wand recharge room and starting the cycle all over again. For fuck's sake. Alright, despite my best efforts, I could not get this finished by the end of the episode, so do not worry, we will pick up basically where we left off, except with all the necessary materials in paw this time. So unfortunately, I'll have to wrap up right now. So, thank you for watching. If you liked this video, why not like, subscribe, share it with your friends, leave a comment if you want, and next episode, I will definitely get this Essentia sorting system up and running with jars all the way down to the back there. With that, my name has been Warden, and I am signing off for tonight. Have a good evening, everybody!